Hoffman's the second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion is approved. I'm looking for the approval of the meeting minutes from our July 9th meeting, 2020. If I get approval for that, please.
Ness moves.
Evan Ness is first, or second.
Second, Slutenhofer.
Slutenhofer's the second. The further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Is there any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Move straight on to the SWIC report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you want to approve the minutes?
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped over that. I apologize. Approval of the meeting minutes from July 9th as well. If I get a motion for that, please.
So moved by Hoffman.
Okay, second.
Ike.
Any opposed? Any discussion? Okay, motion approved. Now let's go to the SWIC report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's been a busy month. I'll kind of break this up into its parts, and I'll be as efficient as I possibly can with time. Over the past month, I'll give you a quick status board update, more or less. It has run well. We've been able to train a few more agencies on it and get a few more signed up. As of today, we currently have around just shy of 500 accounts on status board. And within status board itself, we have about 467 individual resources that are available for people to see. Again, these are set up so that only agencies can see things that are pertinent to them. But we are getting some use out of this program, and it has been stable over the last month. So we've had no outages, which is way good. Recently, we've worked with State Radio closely on some training sessions for some local PSAPs. We went to Cedar County. We also went to Butler County, among others. We've done some questions and answerings with other local stakeholders as needed. Those training sessions are still available, whether you want to do them one-on-one in person or if you want to do them virtually. We can accommodate almost everything. The feedback we've gotten from some of the local agencies at these sessions has been excellent as well. I know I've learned a little bit about every place I've gone so far, and it really helps with trying to figure out what the interoperable operating picture is for the state of Iowa. Also been assisting with various committee work. This afternoon, I'll probably be working on some training videos that'll be set up for the training committee to look at later this month. We'll detail that more during the training committee report later on in the meeting. The one thing that I was able to participate in this past month as well, you may recall that we had some pretty heavy participation in the National Emergency Communications Plan that was recently published in 2019. I was able to sit on a webinar, and the webinar was attached to the documents for today. But the webinar really kind of got into some things that CIS is focusing on for cybersecurity components of the NECP, and it went over in depth the SafeCom National Survey. And some of the unique things that survey revealed was that 37% of public safety organizations have been impacted by some sort of cybersecurity disruption. That's a significant number. These attacks have been focused around distributed denial of service attacks, ransomware, you name it. Key components to mitigate things like this include assessing your own risk and exposure and addressing any gaps. It's kind of asking yourself the questions like, are you aware of what you have currently? How do you manage passwords? Are they single or are they multi-factor? What kind of backups do you use? How often do you back up? And what are those backups connected to? And then also, most notably, 60% of public safety disciplines located in rural areas do not have active cybersecurity planning ongoing at this point. And for Iowa, I think that's significant given our layout and demographics. So one thing that also came up within that survey and presentation was that cybersecurity is not prioritized in SOPs or SOGs or within training. Again, that slide deck's included. There's some pretty good stuff in there on how you can take some steps locally to try to address any gaps that you may have at this point. With that being said, I'll kind of conclude the report a little bit early, and I'll go ahead and take any questions.
Okay, hearing none, let's move on to the 911 council report.
All right, thanks. This is Blake DeRushi, 911 Program Manager. Quite a bit actually to report, and some of it I'll cover from just a Homeland Security Emergency Management perspective. First up, though, for 911, at the end of the day today, we should have 7 PSAPs up and running on the merged wireline and wireless next generation 911 network. So those cutovers are proceeding as scheduled. I've had to reschedule a couple of them, either due to technological challenges or they were inundated with 911 calls earlier in the week. So well underway and continuing that process. This month we still are anticipating utilizing FirstNet for a second connection for those PSAPs that are on the Zetron shared services. So they will be connected back to the host through both the ICN as well as FirstNet. So that'll add a certain level of redundancy and reliability to those 18 or so PSAPs that are up and running on the shared services at this point. The process there is most likely to enact that FirstNet connection for future turnups, and then periodically retrofit the existing sites as well. So new sites first, and then continue to catch up sites that are already existing on the shared services after that. Kind of as a segue into the storm and our department's response, we have worked with the FCC and CISA, and special thanks to Chris and Jim Lundstedt on getting DERS activated. That is the FCC reporting system that is usually used for hurricane response. It is actually, it's voluntary, but it gives us the ability to see what is down on a county by county basis for cell phones and other types of communication infrastructure. So it's really helping us out with our ESF2, which is communications response within the state EOC. So again, it was kind of a feeling out process for us, having never done that before. We got the raw data this morning, the first spill of that information. And within the FCC, they will kind of take that raw data and put a nice little report behind that, and hoping it gets posted to their website. It is public information, so it is kind of aggregated information, but it's proven to be super useful so far, and giving us a snapshot of where infrastructure still needs to be repaired. What's also very useful is it gives us an idea of why those outages are occurring, if it's power to the facility or backhaul. And those are kind of the primary reasons at this point. It gives us that information. Again, it's on an aggregated basis. That information is fairly sensitive to those companies, so it's not drilled down that far. But it's information that we haven't gotten before, and frankly, I don't know that we've needed it until this week. Never had a disaster quite like this with the broad communication issues that we've seen so far. So special thanks to the FCC, Jim Lundstedt, and Chris for getting that information. I think the only other thing that I would have to add is from the 911 perspective, throughout the storm, the system designed performed as it was designed. As far as we can tell, there were no 911 calls that entered the statewide 911 system that were dropped. There were certainly calls that might not have been able to connect into the 911 system, either due to towers being down or congestion on the carrier network. And again, most certainly there were PSAPs that were busy, were down for a period of time, and those calls rolled over to their backup pre-identified PSAPs. But as far as we can tell, there were no actual calls dropped or lost once it hit the 911 network. So thanks to everyone. It's been a busy week. It's been a hard year. Appreciate everyone's efforts. And I think that concludes my report unless there's any questions. All right, thanks.
All right, thanks, Blake. Let's move on to, is Chair Buffington, did he end up signing in, or is someone stepping in for him if he did not?
Mr. Chair, I do not see Andy on today. I can step in here and cover the UGC report. Also wanted to make note, I think we may have reapproved the meeting minutes from July twice. That's my bad. We'll make sure that the minutes reflect the first approval of those minutes. As far as the user group committee goes, they met last month. They discussed 3 applications, Bremer County Sheriff's Office, Clayton County, and Ida County. Clayton and Ida were updates. Bremer County is a new application. We'll cover that under new business later on today. We will meet again next week on the 20th. Go ahead and take any questions.
Okay, hearing none, do you want to go right into finance? Are you still doing that, or do we have a finance chair or vice chair?
We do not yet have a finance chair, so I can kind of cover that.
Kind of give me the status on that. What's the progress on getting one? We've been without one for some time here.
Yes. So been in discussions with a couple of board members who may be a good fit for that. At this point, given everything that has been going on, they requested some extra time to think about it. Basically, working on the addressing of COVID and the other things that are affecting us today. So respected their request for some extra time. And I plan on touching base with them again at the end of this month once things kind of get into hopefully more of a steady state. So my hope is that we can have some of this lined up for our next month's meeting as far as a chair for the finance committee.
Okay.
So as far as finance goes, we got our appropriation from the general fund. That was $115,661. The current balance of the interoperable fund should be $250,916.61. So far in state fiscal year 2021, we've spent $2,640.64. As far as SLIGP goes, we are looking at the start of a new fiscal year. So far, we have spent right around $6,366.72. Of that, $5,093.38 were federal expenses. And the amount remaining in the grant should be right around, give me a second here. I don't have the amount left in the grant in front of me right now, but I will go ahead and add that to the minutes and send that total remaining for SLIGP out to the board as well once the meeting is concluded. Any questions?
Okay, so unless I'm missing it, I don't see the finances posted. Could you ensure that that is posted for the board to review prior to the board meeting and that it's on the agendas for all the documents so that we don't have to follow up with
Absolutely.
I know it's a little, we're in the little
Tom,
transit. Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's posted on the website under the meeting documents, but I don't think that I've ever really attached those to when I send out email, the agenda and stuff. So do you want me to start doing that, sending the...
Just if you want to do that, or make sure the board is aware how to get to it during this particular part of the, then maybe Chris can bring it up on the screen for any questions. We can go through it and see it.
Would you want to see those on the website now, Tom?
I don't think it's necessary now. You could just inform I think the board members know, as well as the public knows, how to get to them is the most important thing so they can see it. You don't necessarily have to use the meeting time right now to display it, but just as long as everybody knows that we're publishing those and then how to get to those documents is my concern.
Okay.
All right, we'll move on to governance. Chair Huffman.
The governance committee met on the 3rd. We discussed the air to ground policy and decided that it met all the requirements and didn't violate any other policies, and decided to send it forward to be voted on by the committee. We'll see that under new business. We also continued to discuss the sub-regional talk group policy, just sort of monitoring that and making sure it's in line with governance. And we discussed the 30-day comment policy and suggested that the standards committee would review what our statement is about the comment window and whether or not it needs to vary depending on the type of issue. So I think the standards committee is going to look into that. Are there any questions?
Peter, this is Patrick Updike.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is the appropriate time to ask the question. So when it comes to the air to ground policy, was there any discussion on the licensing of those frequencies?
No, I don't believe we discussed that specifically. At least not from the
I
standpoint
wonder if that wouldn't be,
of governance.
I don't know if right now is the appropriate time to debate that. I suppose we could wait till later in the agenda, but that's a question I have.
Is that an operations issue?
Yeah. So you want to, let me ask the chair. Tom, would it be better if we waited till later in the agenda to discuss this?
Yeah, let's just keep moving. You can pick it up towards
Okay.
the end of the information sharing if you like, or towards the very end. It's up to you.
No. Yeah, let's just wait. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to operations. Chair Bischoff.
Good morning. The Operations Committee has met, and the primary topic of conversation is doing the research and with the assistance of the SWIC to identify what are the common names for all of the Isicsb talk groups and how that is memorialized, and when changes will be needed to those talk groups along the way, what is the expectation for users to adopt those names and have them appropriately placed in their radios. So just looking for research. Think a lot of these documents perhaps exist, but they're just not on the website and they're just not accessible. So with the assistance of SWIC Myers, we're trying to figure that out. And if there are any holes in that process, what they are, what the holes are, and then how can they be filled. So just looking at that. And that's the activity of the Operations Committee. Any questions? Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Outreach, or Myers.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We recently held our Region 3 outreach in Ida Grove. It was pretty well attended. Keep in mind, I think we initially had in the neighborhood of 30 plus registered attendees. We had to cancel it, and then we rescheduled it, and I think we were up in the upper 20s. Sergeant Truckee of the Ida Grove or Ida County Sheriff's Office was great in his assistance in helping us get the facility lined up, along with their 911 manager there, Ed Helm, and very good attendance. Covered a lot as far as the use of Isicsb talk groups, how to use the control stations and consolettes, and also a little bit on status board. Still working on RIC 1 scheduling. Holly, do you have a status update for that?
Still working on it. Trying to figure out where we're gonna have it, with everywhere like being closed, and so yeah.
Thank you. And the updated newsletter went out, I believe, yesterday for August, and we continue to try to make sure that any pertinent information can get out to people in a timely fashion, especially now that everybody continues to be busy. That's the report for outreach. I'll go ahead and take any questions.
Okay, with hearing none, we'll move on to the training. Chris, you might as well just keep flowing.
So with training, we have an update on the TA requests from ICTAP. We'll cover those first. We just delivered encryption planning and usage for administrators. That was held on July 30th. Again, the main focus of that was to help communications administrators develop an understanding of encryption. If we could hold this session and have people walk away with an understanding of what questions to ask, we consider that a success. So far, it feels like we've been able to accomplish that based on the feedback. The feedback we've gotten has been very positive. That was part one of a two-part webinar. The first one, of course, was for the administrators and decision makers. The second one is for technicians. We're starting to zero in on end of September for that TA delivery, possibly. Initially, we were looking at maybe earlier parts of September, but with the way things were shaping up, with some response locally, and then also now the storms we had earlier this week, we're looking towards the end of September. As far as training projects ongoing, we're working on the pursuit training video as well. We're basically working on getting the recording done for the audio, for the overlaying of the slide deck, and then that, once it's done and approved, will be posted on the website. Hopefully we'll have that turned around in a month or so. That's the update from the training committee. I'll go ahead and take any questions.
So, Chris, I really appreciate, and as well as the board members, I'm sure they do too, on everything you pick up when it comes to reporting on each one of these committees. However, we're going to burn you out here if we don't call some attention to where we're lacking on committee chairs and vice chairs for these committees. So can you give me a quick rundown of where we're at for, where are we lacking here? I know we talked about finance. Is there any other committees that we need to have some people step up to the chair these and vice chair these?
Yeah, so with the training committee chair, I had reached out to an individual board member about taking the position. I thought he'd be good at it. He's been tied up pretty significantly with various responses due to COVID. Was going to give that individual some time to kind of get things back to steady state also, and then pass it on to that person, assuming they were still okay with that. The help for me at this point would come with assistance with the training committee and outreach. I know Holly could use some help too, and there's times where she may need some more timely responses on questions that she may have on something that may normally be posed to me. Those are the things that would help out right now. There's some busy work that has to be done with the training committee as far as correspondence, but otherwise, you know, these are things that I can take on a temporary basis. But you are correct in that some of these have been relatively long as far as the extra slack being picked up. So I'll go ahead, if anybody wants to take on these roles, let me know and we'll work out the details. Typically when we do have people service committee chairs, I always try to make sure that we keep the workload at a reasonable level to the point where it doesn't necessarily intrude on anything that you would normally otherwise be doing. So if anybody's interested in any of these chairs, let me know and we'll get the details sorted out, and I'll give you a full brief on where each committee stands.
Keep in mind, if you're a committee chair, you have to be on the board to be the chair, but the vice chair can be anybody you choose. It does not have to be a board member for the vice chair, as well as working groups don't have to be. So is it too much to ask, Chris, to maybe by next month we'll have a better grasp on, maybe we'll have some at least some chairs and vice chairs? I know we've got some requests that came through on emails for interested people that are interested in being on a committee. Operations is a great committee. Michelle, you're doing a great job on that. That's a busy one. Training, the outreach and training committee, I think, are essential to our continued success with this system and how we reach out to the locals on their needs and train on how to use this stuff. There's a lot of stuff in the policies and I kind of referred to that in the newsletter, that we have to pay attention to, that we committed to by developing policy that we have to do each year. And I think I've mentioned this before, that when we develop best practices off policies from other states, which is a good thing to do instead of reinventing the wheel, sometimes when we do that, we commit ourselves to things that we have to do on a yearly, if not a quarterly basis. So it's very important that we get those chairs engaged, and some good vice chairs and committee members to spread out the workload, so to speak. Because Chris can't, you just physically cannot do all of this. So I'm sure we'll get there, but maybe by next month we'll have a better grasp on this. If you could send out maybe an interest letter for the vacancies you have, I think that would be a good start to get this rolling. As far as the finance, there's really not a whole lot of work to do in that. DPS has a good, all the money funnels through, and our director is basically putting all the numbers for you, and it's just reporting what it is. So that one's a pretty simple task. But we do have to have somebody represented on the board. Is there any more further questions on that? Are we going down the right path here? Okay, I think we are. Chris, if you could do that, that'd be great.
Chair Lampy.
Yeah.
How are we with filling all of the positions within the board, i.e. increasing the pool of people who can fill these chair positions?
Chris would have that list. We just sent a notice to the governor's office. Was it last week or this week? Can you update us on that one?
Yes. So a lot of the processes within the appointing of vacant seat positions with new people was paused during the initial disaster response this year to allocate personnel towards that response. That process should have been started up, I think, a couple weeks ago. And we've been in touch with the governor's office on some pending applications, because we do have pending applications right now for the EMS position, for the municipal police position. And Larry Smith actually submitted a renewal for the EMA position. All those positions are pending approval of the governor's office, and that's where they stand as of today. I know the process has been started again. I'm just not sure where we are in the queue, because we're not the only board and commission currently that's run through the Iowa Boards and Commissions group over in the governor's office. So they're working on starting this process back up for all of the boards and commissions across the state, Michelle. So I don't know if that's quite the non-answer you're looking for, but we do have several people that have applied for these positions. We're just waiting for the approvals.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate the update.
So hopefully by next board meeting, we should have a good grasp on the seats that are empty for the board position, and maybe some people that stepped up to fill the committees. All right, let's move on to technology. Chair update.
Thank you. The Technology Committee met on the 23rd of July and the 4th of August. I was on vacation the 4th of August, so I wasn't able to attend that call, but both meetings addressed the LTE deployable policy that we've been working with FirstNet on. So there's been some edits made, I guess you could say. Hopefully that document made it to everybody's email. What we're going to do with this, I think, and just to be safe and what have you, is just to sit on this until the next technology call. And then probably more than likely what we'll do is we'll bring it to the board for 30-day comment approval. The other item was the cradle point for STR trailers. We discussed that kind of from a technical standpoint and just came to the conclusion that, yeah, it's a good idea. Let's push this over to some of the other committees and let them look at it, you know, and have them deal with it from their standpoint, whether it's operations or governance. So that's where we're at. I've been called up for jury duty in September, so if I'm not around then, I will make sure that our vice chair takes the lead role on handling the technology committee affairs for September. That's all I have. Thank you.
So for the cradle points, you're referring to the STR to put it in wide area trunking, like so instead of a standalone.
Correct.
So the technology
Yeah.
approved it. So technology approved the concept. So where's it at now? Just
Well,
buying it?
we want to have the operations and the other committees take a look at this concept of connecting through LTE to make a trunk site out of that trailer. So we want to get that information out to the various committees so that everybody can take a look at the validity of it.
Okay. FirstNet Broadband Committee, Chair Bischoff.
Yes, the FirstNet committee met on Tuesday morning. So the primary topic of conversation was the impact that FirstNet had as a result of the storm, excuse me, and the way in which AT&T was responding. So we just got updates, and I'm sure David will give those updates here, so I don't want to steal his thunder. But that was the primary topic of conversation, and the real takeaway from that conversation was AT&T realizes they've got some work to do if they're going to support first responders. We can't lose towers 8 hours into an event, so or from the onset. So work to be done there, but they're aware of it and they're putting together a plan, and we'll be receiving updates on those plans and execution of them. Any questions for me regarding FirstNet? Thanks.
Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to LEA Committee Chair Stufflebeam and or Rob Broder, Sheriff.
Yes, Chair Lampe, this is Rob Broder. I was present at the meeting in July. We actually did meet July 21st at 1 o'clock. We had 7 committee members attend. We went over several things. We did hear from operations from Michelle Bischoff, who gave us an update on the sub-regional talk group policy and the pilot program that's underway. And we also heard from Swick Myers, who has done a really good job putting together some really poignant information in the way of a spreadsheet showing us where we're at in this whole process, from keeping track of who has the test calls, successful test calls, training, and also another item that's been added to it through this meeting was the idea of maybe putting an identification as far as what system each user is using, so that we can identify if there's any holes between the various systems in Iowa. I know in the beginning, my concern, a lot of concern of people in that committee, was how the old legacy systems would come along in this process. And I think by adding that to the spreadsheet, we're going to get a really good idea of how that's going. From what we can see, and you can certainly hear it on the radio, I think things are going very well. People are very comfortable using the new talk groups. The statewide dispatch announcements have become, I would say, quite annoying to most people, which is by design. That's what we wanted. And from what I'm hearing from people out in the field, they're going to be very, very happy when we finally do shut those LEA towers down and we don't have to listen to that. And I think if you really think about it, we were talking about a system that a lot of people thought we couldn't live without, and now people are looking forward to having it shut down. So if that's the case throughout the state, then I think we've been pretty successful.
That's good to hear. It's really good to hear.
Yeah. And that would conclude my report if anybody has any questions. Okay, thank you.
Hey, thanks a lot. Okay, we'll move on to other reports, information sharing amongst board members. I'll open it up before I always have information for you, so I'll let somebody else go first if there's any. Okay, I'll just jump right in then. To give you an update on site walks, we're required to do site walks for all 92 sites. That is the baseline for the contract. We have completed, along with DOT's help, DOT and DPS, my techs, as well as myself. I think at the last board meeting I was assisting with that. We have completed those physical walks. Now, after those walks were completed, naturally you have a few things that need what we call punch list items that need to be addressed. So we've got those identified. Motorola is working on those. The problems that we've seen are minor problems, not system affecting problems. So my people are working on all the paperwork now to catch up with all those sites to get it documented well, and then when those punch list items are completed, we document that as well for each site. So that's occurring now. As far as the contract goes, we are getting close to system acceptance. One of the big ones was we had to get the site walks completed. All punch list items have to be taken care of, and then we go through the contract as well as the RFP to ensure that the state has got everything that they've asked for and paid for according to the RFP, and the contract terms are met. That is still back to DAS at this point. A month ago, I said we were getting close, so I informed DAS that we are getting close. So somebody needs to step in here because they will have to be the official signer of the system acceptance since DAS signed the contract at the initial event in 2015. So we will be having a call next week on that. That stuff, little stuff like that, we need to follow up on so things uptight. So that's the progress. I can't give you a date when system acceptance will be. It could be 30 days from now. It could be 45 to 60 days from now. It just depends on how things move. We're slowed down slightly, obviously, by the weather that happened Monday, but most of the stuff survived, if not all of it survived, except for a few microwave dishes, and Melvin's going to report on that. Spare parts are part of the contract, and we have spare parts now that were delivered we spaced them out geographically for obvious reasons in case an antenna gets struck by lightning or some internal part gets broke or needs to be replaced immediately. That affects the system performance. So we have spare parts. There's approximately 4 pallets and 2 sets of antennas for each region. So we put the first set up in Storm Lake at the dispatch center in the garage. The second set is here across the street from DPS in our storage facility. And the third set is over in Cedar Rapids at the DOT facility. It was delivered last week. Unfortunately, that building now has been destroyed, and now those parts are on the crates have been exposed to the weather, or will be. So now this morning we're working on, I just rented a storage facility in Johnson County. So we have to move that stuff into an environment which is now going to be, it isn't at the present, but it's going to be heated and cooled with a climate controlled building for that stuff. Those antennas are 26 feet long. If you look at top of the tower, they don't look 26 feet long, but they're 26 feet long and about 4 inches in diameter. So we had to have a building big enough to do that. So I went ahead and rented that to get them moved today. I do have a call with FirstNet on Monday to discuss the weather situation and what they call a rapid operations group, a ROG team, and how that works with disasters and what their process is to get a better understanding of what happens there. And I'll share that with you, Michelle, when we're done with that. And that's pretty much all I have as far as where we're headed with the contract. We're getting close. It's been a long time. thanks to the DOT for all the help they gave, because that was quite a task to get all those sites done. Any questions for me? All right, I'll turn it over. Is Melvin on?
I am.
Okay, Melvin, you have the floor. Go ahead.
All right. I'm calling you from the Mercado bunker over here. When this thing started on Monday, we started getting some alarms and some notifications, and noticed some odd activity. And it kind of grew more and more. It just swept from the western portion of the state all the way to the eastern state. So it was quite a challenge trying to figure out what was happening. But once we realized what was happening, then the rest was really all about coordination and getting folks out there to figure out what needed to be done. So what we found is, as we know, we have multiple intersecting loops throughout the state. So we get really good protection when you have areas, right, that are impacted by this. The difference here is that this thing swept through the entire state with wind gusts that were pretty darn high. So we had several loops that were affected by this during the time, and so it isolated some of the loops. The system kept on rerouting traffic through different paths to get back to the core. At one point, the event got so bad with a lot of the damage in the middle of the state that the core actually switched over. So we ended up running the state from Storm Lake and from Cedar Rapids in order to keep things operational. The center there, the state got disconnected or impacted. The performance got impacted, so the system automatically switches from one core to the other without waiting for total separation. It just sees a decrease in performance, so it goes ahead and switches. So the system, as designed, right, survived, but we had some performance issues, and that's what we mobilized to go and deal with. So far, for we can see, there's been nothing broken, but things have moved. So as an example, these dishes are large. We have, overall, we have the majority of dishes are 6-foot dishes. We have in some places 8-foot dishes, and in other places we have diversity dishes that are 4-foot dishes. We had, so far in the statewide system, we've been able to identify 4 sites in which the dish cover, which basically looks like a gigantic Frisbee, was damaged, but the site continues to operate. So we've been mobilizing crews. We have 8 crews scattered throughout the state, and our focus has been getting the middle of the state, the corridor that goes from west to east, as tight as possible, so that we can make sure that all the other intersecting loops throughout the state remain connected in the event of more weather events. We had 9 sites that lost completely power, and so the backup generators kicked in, and as of this morning, only one of those sites had power restored, so the generator was powered down. The remaining 8 sites still are running on generator power. We have approximately 2 weeks worth of fuel, so that gives us enough time. We're keeping an eye on the fuel levels. Once we get down to 25%, we'll start looking at, what do we do? How can we make arrangements and where and whatnot, because we still have plenty of time to do it. But right now, we're protected, so we're in pretty good shape. We restored the system back, so we forced it back to switch to the core JFHQ, which is in the middle of the state, and we're operating. We have, in some places, we have the what's described as bouncing, and that is because we have crews out there that we're trying to fix, realign the path. So the winds, in some cases above 99 miles per hour, the force was so strong that it could move the dish a couple of inches. In one case, As an example, for Boone County, the dish has a supporting what we call a tie arm that sits on the side that's used to give it strength to resist the wind. The wind pressure was so big that it actually bent the pipe. So that's the kind of level of impact that we saw on the system. So right now we continue to operate, and what we did was we established 3 bands of priorities. We looked for the worst performing paths, which meant that the microwave dishes moved enough so that any little event would affect traffic. So we got on those immediately. And then we had a secondary one, which was, average, that it still survived, but we need to tighten it up again so that's within spec. And then we have the least affected ones, which we still want to go out and take a look at, but traffic is working fine. So by the end of this week, so this started on Monday, most of the work on Monday was just getting crews in place, accounted for, and targeting the specific sites that they were going to go and work on. And so on Monday, the work was minimal. It was all about making sure we got all the people in and clearing out. Access to the sites was difficult because of all the debris in the road. Members of our team, some of them were impacted by this, so we had to work around that as well. So that was a little bit of a challenge, but we got beyond that. Everybody's safe, and the rest of it right now is just all about finishing the task at hand. We expect that by the end of this week, all of the primaries and the secondaries will be taken care of, and service is being restored for those who saw the impact, which was mainly this bouncing effect because the system would reroute traffic, trying to keep things alive. So overall, I think we're in pretty good shape. It was quite a shocker, especially now that we're pretty much towards the end. As Chair Lampe mentioned, we finished all the site walks, and we're just in the process of cleaning up the punch list items.
Melvin, I have the screen up if you can see it. This is the system live. Could you kind of describe which sites were affected? I know you had 7 or 8 of them.
Sure. I can't see that, but I can say in the center corridor we had physical damage in terms of that radome cover. It was the Carroll site. Denison site had some damage there. And then in terms of the path performance, we had Audubon to Springbrook to Woodward, Woodward to JFHQ and Story, Brooklyn and Newton, Iowa to Cedar Rapids to Jones. We had issues in Marshall to Grundy, and then Zwingo to Dubuque on the eastern side of the state. So it was kind of scattered, but you can see that that is pretty much that center corridor from west to east on the state. So the majority was on Region 1 and Region 6. We saw some issues up in the northern portion of Region 1, Calhoun to Storm Lake, and we have a crew taking a look at KTIN Fort Dodge right now. But overall, these survived, but what ends up happening is you run out of options as to where to route the traffic, and so what happens is that the system then picks what's available. Even if the performance is not as where it needs to be, it'll pick that, which is why you have that bouncing effect. But then when it sees there's something better, it comes up, it returns back to that. The generators, the generators that were running, let me see if I have that one, were, let me see. Oh my goodness.
I think I have them here.
Okay, it was, we had Woodward running on generator, Story, Mitchellville, Newton, Brooklyn, Tama, Marshall, and Cedar Rapids, and Scott. Those were the sites. So as consistent with the center corridor, most of the damage was done in the state.
When do you
So as I
anticipate?
said,
When do you anticipate getting everything back to normal, as far as normal can be, lined up, I guess?
so I think, given all the number of crews that we have right now, we're still expecting that will be done by Friday. Theoretically, we're actually shooting for today, but there might be some stragglers that stretch out to Friday. But those would be the lower priority ones that are not really system impacting, but it's really more of making sure that we have enough fade margin so that when things go wrong, we have enough reserve, if you will, to be able to overcome the issue.
Okay, for anybody that hasn't seen this screen that you're watching the Genesis program right now, and it's a live shot of the system. Actually, as any line goes across the screen, that's a transmission from either a PSAP or a radio on the street to the tower. So from the system administrator standpoint, this is what we were watching on Monday through today until it's fixed properly. And to be honest with you, I was shocked that after it went through that I still see these lines and transmissions occurring, because I expected this whole section here to be down. Well, it was down in respect to the power, and then the generator kicked in, but I think those dishes did fairly well considering the wind speed they were dealing with. I think Melvin was correct. From an engineering standpoint, those microwaves are lined up, but then I think a lot of them were on the brink of breaking the signal, but they were hanging on as best they could. I was just shocked that they did hang on to allow us to still communicate, which is a good thing.
Chair, this is Dave with a quick comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, as you know, Des Moines went through a recent process and also selected to join the Isicsb and Motorola solution. And this is certainly not a dig against anyone else, but I can just say that through the process with both Isicsb and through Des Moines' selection, some questioned whether the state of Iowa should really have or really needed 3 redundant cores. And seeing a widespread storm like this and seeing how the traffic was routed, not just to a second, but to a 3rd core, really affirms the decisions made by yourself and many other people to not only have the triple redundant cores, but also have the resilient paths and the extent of generator fuel on site when needed, and just the overall system resiliency and redundancy. So enormous storm, with a wide swath across the state, and it seems that while performance may have suffered somewhat, it was very reasonable, and the system and the people behind it rose to the occasion, and as you would hope and expect for public safety grade communication. So congratulations to everybody on that.
Thank you, Dave. That's a good point. Like I said, I was shocked that it survived, but you spend a lot of money on this stuff, and you may think it's a lot of equipment. We really don't need that, but when it happens like that, it's proved that there really wasn't any effect to the user. Notice no difference when those cores switched, and even when the microwaves were out of line. Very, very little user affected here. We do a lot of stuff here when we watch this, so we spend a lot of money on this software also for Genesis, and it's worth every penny we spent to get a visual so we can see. I was even calling Melvin, and we had the phone on the phone at the time, and he couldn't see the Genesis. He doesn't have the software, but I could, so I was relaying information to him on particular sites. For example, I would pull up a site at Cedar Rapids and pull it up, and I could see that there was this many users on it, and at the time that the health of the system was okay, and that we had good radio connections. Now, if it wasn't, these are all these zeros, and for me to get that information to him quickly without having to call one of his FSOs to get to the hut to dig into the system was a pretty good resource for Motorola to see quickly what's been going on that they didn't even know about. So Genesis proved well for us here, and it continues to. It's quite the software. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and we're going to keep moving. And Melvin, do you have anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, let's move on to FirstNet AT&T.
Good morning, everyone. First, I'll give you updates on site builds. We had 2 towers that were added during the month of July. One was east of Des Moines along Highway 163 in Altoona. The other one was west of Iowa City along I-80 near Oxford, Iowa. And we also added 3 more small cell nodes, one in West Des Moines, one in Urbandale, and one in Des Moines on near the airport on McKinley Avenue to help with coverage. So again, those are the new sites and small cell nodes that were added during the month of July. Of course, the big news is the storm on Monday that luckily I was not here, and I was actually in Tennessee. I was actually traveling back from Tennessee when this happened, and as you can imagine, we had numerous requests for deployable assets to be dispatched to different agencies because of tower issues, towers being down, which we did accommodate. We dispatched multiple deployables to different cities in Iowa. Some we did not have to send. They were on the way, but we got generators on and power back to site, so we didn't have to get deployables there, but we actually still have deployables out. Marshalltown still has one. Their main site continues to be down. It took a major hit with the wind. In fact, when I was talking to the police chief, he compared this incident worse than the tornado a couple of years ago with the high wind speed. So FirstNet, again, I was on the phone Monday evening, Monday night, Tuesday morning, Tuesday. So we were doing everything we could to make sure that we were getting sites back online and getting the deployables to the agencies that were requesting those. I know Tom mentioned he's going to have a call next Monday. We did have a few things that kind of surprised me with generators. So I believe that's what the phone call that Tom is going to be about having with FirstNet. We have got generators that were sent in, but I'm not going to go into it at this time. Tom, I'm going to let you just have that call, and then you can report back if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
But does anybody have any questions as far as response or towers or any questions I might try and answer? We're down to about most of the towers are back online. The ones that are still down should be back on by Friday. But the good news is we do have overlapping coverage, so it is not causing any issues that I am currently aware of at the moment.
Okay, any questions? Okay, is Jim Lundstedt on the call today?
Yes, sir, I am here.
Go right ahead, Jim.
Okay. Three quick things for you today. First, sharing a graphic that was reported by Blake with the 911 User Council. There are different reporting requirements for the regulated telecommunications companies that provide wireline, wireless, cellular, internet, etc., that are regulated by the FCC. Typically, we see a considerable number of these reported through what's called the Network Outage Reporting System, or NORS. What we are allowed to see is anonymized. In other words, a carrier reports an outage of an area X or a geographic area Y or a population of Z, but they do not attribute it to a specific company. However, there are mechanisms in the FCC policy to invoke a wide area reporting system called DIRS, the Disaster Information Reporting System, that allows the Commission to compel broadcasters and regulated companies to report their status to the Commission. This is typically used in a hurricane situation where considerable advance notice can be set up for public notice, or post-event such as an earthquake. But in this particular case, Iowa had its own version of hurricane this week, and working with Blake, the ESF2 and 911 program rep at HSCMD and your SWIC, we requested the FCC activate DOORS to give us a view of what the carriers are reporting. This particular data dip occurred at 0630 this morning and was broken out into a handy graphic. You see those counties highlighted in yellow who have an ongoing significant outage of cellular infrastructure. You can actually see the count of sites and the sites that are out of service. There's also a footnote at the bottom that talks about there was 8 sites that are reported damaged, 141 at that time that reported transport. In other words, high capacity data circuit backhauled to the site that are down, and a number there that I think it's 184, Chris, that were reporting they were out of commercial power, so either operating on generator batteries or were out of service because they'd expended their useful fuel. So it says backup power 54. So at the time of this dip, there were 184 that were down because of power loss. So the importance of hardening sites, such as was done with Isicsb, is emphasized here, and we will continue to share this. DIRS is a daily input from the carriers to the Commission, and as of right now, they have not posted their colorful graphics that break this out on a county-by-county basis. We're not going to expand it, as far as I know, beyond just telecommunications carriers, but it is an indication of the, if you look in the left column at the percentage of power outage in that county when this poll was run, and then see the number of sites that are down, it'll kind of give you a good idea the impact. We always tell people that communications follows power. And even with emergency power resources, in recent history, we've seen generators that had to run so long that they had to be replaced or failed in service. We hope we won't see that here, but wanted to particularly call your attention to the counties of Benton, Lynn, Marshall, and Tama, where we have these outages that are significant and ongoing. And the carriers are working along with the carrier class transport that connects to the tower pretty hard to get this all back in service. Chris, that's all I have for that graphic. Thank you. I wanted to call your attention to a couple of other things, just perhaps of interest. I talked with a Iowa communications unit leader this week after the event, and he mentioned that he'd been using WPS pretty extensively where he could get cell signal, and it was helpful, and that even in calling one of the carriers to report a circuit outage, he was unable to get through by phone, but used GETS when his long distance call couldn't complete, and it worked on the first attempt. The reminder is that these are essentially free tools, and although we don't have disasters of this magnitude, thankfully, very often These are tools in your toolkit as an emergency management, a manager, an emergency responder, or a communications support staff team. We will be releasing a document this afternoon on identity and credential access management called ICAM that will be coming out to our NICSWIC group. That will be of interest to Chris. ICAM is a long-term inter-system credentialing. Think in terms of your single sign-on if you use such a system with your laptop. But ICAM is for the long-term, the wireless world, and as we look forward to the Internet of Things and how we are credentialed to access systems without individually logging in each and every time, ICAM will be an important tool in that particular toolkit. Finally, just to mention that we are continuing to see a lot of telecommunications or telephone denial of service, TDOS, in the world. There are some new techniques that are coming across the pond to us, if you will. And our Science and Technology Directorate is working on a particular solution that is hardware-based and uses artificial intelligence and cloud computing to help deal with TDOS. It's in a prototype in a couple of PSAPs in the U.S. now, more to come. And similarly, the Science and Technology Directorate and ECD will be working on identifying some potential candidate sites to work with us on a tool that works with your firewall that will help identify and block ransomware. This is going to be very popular if successful. We have some ideas where this might be prototyped, but more to come on that. With the significant increase in ransomware in 2020, we look for this to be a demand item if the technology is proven out. I believe that's all I have. Chris has covered the ICTAP training, and just a quick update for you on that. We will continue to work on the disaster information sharing with HSEMD and share with the SWIC as appropriate. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now, sir.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Moving on to the Standards Working Group.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Standards met last month, looked over alert tones and a couple of other standards of note. The alert tones standard was approved, and that will be moved on to governance for their meeting in September. On the docket for the next couple of months, it'll be continued work on co-location of VHF equipment at an Isicsb site, perhaps some more work on non-governmental EMS, and some reviews of some other standards at the requests of various committees, a couple of which you've heard about today. That's the report. I'll go ahead and take any questions. Okay.
All right, thanks. Old business, sub-regional talk groups update. Michelle, do you have anything that you want to that you haven't already reported from your operations?
I do not. I think we're at, just to be sure, the update would be that the 3 PSAPs, Westcom, Polk County, and Des Moines, are working to program those talk groups into their radios, and we won't have that all accomplished until fall. So it'll be quiet here for a little while we get all that programming done, and then come fall, end of year, we'll have some real world experience as to how those sub-regional talk groups are working out.
Perfect. Control station update. Do you have anything, Chris?
Yeah, good news on that front, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to report that all PSAPs that have received equipment have completed a test call. So as of late last month, I believe that every PSAP in the state should be able to access their regional call for Isicsb. And some of the increases in traffic, as Sheriff Rotter mentioned previously, indicate that they're being used. So the good news is that everybody received equipment, has completed their test call. Again, that's over 100 pieces of equipment. Tremendous thank you goes out to all the PSAPs that worked to get that installed. I know at times it was a heavy lift, but your work and diligence towards enhancing interoperability is appreciated. As far as the control stations go, we are still offering one-on-one training in addition to the regional training that has been done. Depending on the PSAP's policies, whether they're open or closed to the public, we can do this in person or we can do it virtually. Both have worked out well, and all anybody has to do is get in touch with me or anybody at State Radio or anybody else on the various group here, and we'll get you taken care of. So that's the report. I'll go ahead and take questions.
That is a big lift. Certainly happy about that. I will tell you this, that I think the tipping point was the training that everybody reached out and did the hands-on. After listening to some sheriffs and city officials and chiefs and assistant chiefs, and was that they wanted the hands-on. And I think when we did that, I think we tipped a lot of the PSAPs to move a little faster in getting their connection because they realized how important it was. So that's a huge lift that I'm glad we can take that off old business, and then every once in a while show support. If we need any more training, report on how much training we're doing and how well that's going. So that was a big lift, and I'm glad it's accomplished.
Sure.
Chris, if you want to continue with the shared systems study group.
Absolutely. So the Shared Systems Study Group met on Tuesday, July 30th. We're starting to transition into meeting in person where we can and virtually otherwise. So the focus of last meeting was to start getting the work products lined up. So far, we have been able to draft a larger document and an executive summary that can be passed out for a quick synopsis of what's done. So as far as that goes, the larger document includes some history behind kind of how we got to where we are today, a summary of the meeting proceedings. That's not the minutes, but it takes key points from the minutes and brings them into the document, discussion of the findings, and draft recommendations that'll be shared at a later Isicsb board meeting. I'd like to give the study group a chance to look at the document again, as it is fairly lengthy. All together with its parts, so far the document's at right around 40 pages if you count the cover page. And again, that's all of the meeting minutes. It's the executive summary, table of contents, and all of the internal content that goes into it. We had a chance to correlate what we were able to find out with the previous staff study as well that Swick Allen had done back in 2017. So the document as a whole is fairly comprehensive. It seems like we're right on pace to have that before the board within the next few months.
All right. So we could move on to the new user approval. We'll get that taken care of. I know Chair Buffington is not here. Who's going to handle the 3 users?
Mr. Chair, I can go ahead and cover the applications if you like, and then we'll just have to put it up for approval.
Okay, go ahead and get the information.
All right. So we have 3 applications before us today. These were all reviewed and approved by the user group committee, and the loading studies by Motorola came back just fine for all 3 of these. Bremer County Sheriff's Office is looking at level 2 access. They want to use some of the talk groups that are available on the system for their operational use. They are working on procuring radios as well, and they are also working on fitting that into their larger communications picture. Clayton County, they're updating a previous application that they had with us. This is for level 2 access. They're asking for a few talk groups to use for daily operations at some point, and also they are in the process of procuring radios to make this happen. Ida County, they've been a level 2 user for a while. They are working on updating their application. They want to install some core connected dispatch consoles to aid with their dispatching operations and their current operational use of Isicsb. Those are the three applications that are before us today. Again, they were all approved by the user group committee, and Motorola signed off on the loading. So those things are taken care of. I cannot put these up for a motion for approval, but one of the board members can.
So hearing that information, I will entertain a motion to approve those three as listed on the agenda.
So moved, Slutenoffer.
Okay, Slutenoffer, do you have a second?
Ike,
Updike
a
will second.
Updike, second. Further discussion? Okay, all in favor for Brainerd County Sheriff's Office Level 2, Clayton County Update Level 2, and an Ida County Update Level 3.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Let's move on to air to ground policy. Who is handling that today?
That was an operations committee policy. Chair Bischoff, you can take it, or if you want me to go over it, I can as well.
Go ahead, Chris.
All right, thank you. So this is the policy before you for the air to ground channels. This has been discussed at length here for the past couple of years, actually. These channels are basically there. They're actually listed in the NIFOG as being available as well. What these channels are designed to do is that if you're bringing in an air ambulatory service, you can use these for communications with the helicopter. Now, mind you, we have Isicsb to take advantage of as well. So in some cases, the wide area network is going to be more advantageous than these. These channels, though, have their merits, especially if you need to operate off system or if we happen to have personnel going into another part of the country where they may have these widely in use. So given that, the best way to think about these things is that you may have a helicopter coming in from a distance. You're talking to the helicopter the whole way in, but then all of a sudden, as you're starting to coordinate the landing, you may have to go into an area where no radio system can reach. Let's say you got to go down into some sort of valley or ravine. You can use these channels to communicate directly with the helicopter since they're radio to radio in some cases. And you can actually use it to coordinate the landing zone, and it's a direct line to the bird itself. These channels are available for us to adopt. There's several policy statements that go along with it. It basically says that we will adopt the 700 air-to-ground channels by FCC rules as is. I believe we have the ability to do that. We will also list these as required programming on our ICS 217A, so they should be within radius 13 months after this policy's adoption. That'll give people time to work these channels into their normal programming and maintenance cycles so that they don't have to necessarily incur any additional costs. We also would designate 7AG88D to be the preferred channel for landing zone coordination. That's also listed in the NIFOG as the best practice and the suggested use of these. And again, that D means direct. So that's radio to radio. And then also that we would list these channels in status board to maximize situational awareness among agencies that would have to coordinate. And then also it would compel the users to please make sure that if they're going to use these, make note of it on status board as soon as possible by the dispatcher, along with a comment on the location of use. And the reason for that would be is that if we have to land a bird, say in Iowa County, and they're using 88D, that doesn't necessarily affect anybody else if they have to land a secondary air ambulatory vehicle in, say, Pottawatomie County. So a comment on the location of use would be beneficial as well for situational awareness. That's the policy. I'll go ahead and take any questions, or if you want to make a motion, Michelle, on the policy, go ahead and go that route as well.
Did we?
Chris, I got a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, my question is does the FCC just allow you to use these channels? Because I know we were looking into the licensing of these, but we never could get a straight answer because some of the wording in the NIFOG is so vague, like well, the states are supposed to administer these channels, and nobody seems to know what that means.
Yeah.
So, I mean, are you operating under a state license call sign when you do this, or is it just, willy-nilly do whatever you want?
The way it was described to me, Patrick, and speaking with some people, is that if we're going to use these, we have to have an official policy that says we have adopted them and under what conditions we've adopted them under. So in this policy, we specify that we're adopting them under current FCC rules as is. So that should cover us as far as any potential questions on licensing, because at that point we've said we've adopted them. Here's our policy on their use. And at that point, we are actively administering them. So that's the answer I'm able to get in speaking with some sources. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, that's really what I want to know for sure, because it seemed like we never got anywhere with that.
Yeah, I remember those discussions with the FCC. It kind of turned into a revolving door of people to email or call, and was not very productive with some of those calls and emails. I distinctly remember that.
Yeah, right on. Yeah.
So where did this policy start? What committee did it come out of?
This policy came out of operations. It was something that Chair Bischoff asked me to put together and draft, and then they reviewed it over the last couple of months. Chair Bischoff, if you want to comment on that, go ahead.
Actually, that's not completely my recollection. I don't believe that it originated in operations. I believe that it originated in technology, unless it was something that was in the works before I took over chair. This wasn't something that I originated, or the committee while I've chaired it originated. Am I mistaken?
It started off with I believe it started off with a recognition that we may need, and then it went to technology to look at are these feasible to use, and are there any special requirements, which parlays into Patrick's discussion on do we need to license these or do we not?
Okay.
And then at that point, technology had made a recommendation on possibility of use of these to also deconflict any potential adjacent channel problems that may arise in the future. And then this policy came forth from the concept within operations to use these on a first come, first served basis. We've been working on this for about 3 years.
Yep, that would predate me then. So that part of that conversation I do have recollection of. The beginning of it I do not. But yes, your account of it, yes, I guess it did originate in operation. With that, I would move this policy forward, unless I guess I'd like to hear from Chair Updike and ensure that we're good on the licensing situation, because if there's a potential problem, I don't want to put us into a predicament. Patrick, did you have comments?
Based on what? Yeah. Based on what Swick-Myers said, it doesn't look like we have to have a policy and some sort of, statement that says what we're going to do with them.
Right. Yep, that's my understanding as well. I just wanted you to have the opportunity to react before I moved it. Are you good with moving forward with it?
I would say so, yeah.
Okay, very well. Then I will move the policy as written to be adopted by the board.
So I got one quick question. Actually, two. Okay, so the first question is, what for air to ground for accident scenes? Let's just take air care for example. What are they using now? Because I believe they're using the calling channel to call anybody on scene and or mutual aid. So with that being said, when we adopt this, do we need to make sure that they understand to use these, or are we saying that you will use these for air to ground, or you have the option to use them? If you do, because if we don't distribute it to them, they can just use whatever they want. Or what are we saying here?
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, I can comment on that. We had some extensive conversations on this topic with some air medical providers as well. Right now, a lot of them are using VLAW 31 or anything they can possibly find to talk to the locals as they're landing the helicopter. This would be essentially another tool in the toolbox. It wouldn't be replacing, say, Air Methods' use of their own operable talk groups. As far as I can tell, they like them. They want to have that communication with the helicopter on the larger trunk system because they get better coverage and they have more awareness of what's going on. However, where these come in is if you get into that last 500 feet of flight, and if they're at an accident scene, let's just say it's your standard traffic accident, they got to airlift someone out and they have to put some barriers up, and that helicopter's in the process of descending, they may want to go just direct one-on-one with the scene itself for the safety of the pilot and crew on board. And then that way they have that direct lines of communications in case, say, an individual in a vehicle would drive around the Jersey barriers and then all of a sudden they have to abort the landing. That's kind of what this policy is oriented around. It's another tool in the toolbox, a supplement, and not designed to replace anything.
Yeah, I understand that part because we do that today. Because when we call air care, they always ask for a ground contact. Yep. And what we used before Isicsb was always mutual aid. So now, my question is, do we send this out and say this is what we're going to use? Should we send that out, or just say, hey, here's another policy. If you want to use it, you can. Because not everybody is on Isicsb with the portable radios on the ground.
Correct.
So,
and this would probably be something where we make them aware of the policy that, hey, these channels are now officially there for use. Your need to use them will probably vary depending on who you're working with. If they still have VHF radios, they will probably still continue to use VLAW 31. If they do have Isicsb in their radios and they can access the 700 megahertz band, these now become an option. So it's going to be situationally dependent upon who they're working with.
Right. Okay. So my second part of this is, has this been put out for public comment before we adopt anything?
Not at this point.
So do we make a motion to put it out for public comment and then adopt it after that's over, and make sure that we get it to the correct distribution list when we do public comments, because we kind of learned our lesson on the last time?
Tom, this is Pat Updike.
Go ahead, Pat.
I would be willing to make the motion to put it out for 30-day comment.
Okay.
And I will rescind my motion, so we're clean.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor right now to put this document in front of us to public comment regarding air to ground channels. Do I have a second motion?
I will second.
Okay, Michelle will second that. Is there any further discussion on this document?
I guess the further discussion is 30 days long enough, because we're dealing with agencies that could be private, that could have lengthy approval processes. Just again, lessons learned. I don't think all of the air medical carriers are locally based. Some of them, I think, are more nationally based in Iowa.
Right.
So I'm wondering if 60 days might be more appropriate. Again, lessons learned.
Okay, Patrick, back to you.
Okay, so this is Patrick Updike. I'll rescind the motion for 30-day comment period, but I'll make a motion to go 60-day comment period on this draft document for air-to-ground channels in Iowa.
Okay, so we've rescinded the motion for 30 days. We now have a new one from Patrick Updike for 60. Do I have a second on that?
And Bischoff will second.
Okay, we'll second that with Michelle. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Is there any opposed? Okay, the motion passes to put it out 60 days with the proper distribution to the affected parties and the providers. Okay. So now let's move on to AT&T FirstNet tower locations, I'll take that one. Is Dave Barnett, are you still here?
Yes, sir. I'm still here, Chair.
Okay, do you have any backup with you today in regards to like Danny Noble? Are you on the call today, or anybody else, Dave? You know, that can contribute to what I'm about to talk about with placement of towers and resistance to that.
I was hoping that Dustin was going to be on the call because he has not sent me any talking points about what you're fixing to talk about. So I guess it's just me and you, but I'm not. Dustin's got a lot more info. I mean, he kind of filled me in, but I was hoping he was going to be on here to be able to speak to this, since he's been a lot more involved in it than I was. I was just made aware of it the other day.
Dustin, are you on this? Okay, so I'm going to bring up the topic. I'm not expecting you to provide any answers. Michelle, you can chime in as well. I think you know what I'm going with this. So when we're placing these towers, the AT&T is placing these towers according to the state plan as far as coverage goes, in order to meet our requirement of coverage that the Broadband Committee signed off on, the state portal plan. Once in a while, there's resistance to putting those towers. I experienced it myself with Isicsb towers. And I think once in a while, AT&T has resistance as well with the counties that they wish to put a tower in. With that being said, Michelle or any board members, Michelle at the Broadband Committee level, is there something that we can do as far as a statement to give the facts to the counties about the system and have them still they can still make their decisions and oppose what they want for as far as permits, but to assure that they have the correct facts about the system and what it's designed for, to send out to the counties in Iowa or counties that are resistant to put a tower in their county for the public safety network.
I think it would be helpful if we reached out to county officials or municipal officials to inform them, particularly in the southwest corner where AT&T now is actively building towers, to inform them of what it is. It's been a while since the FirstNet hoopla, if you will, when we first said, yes, we want to be members, and yes, this is what it's all about, and it's great, and it's wonderful, and this is all the things that it's going to provide to us as first responders. So there may have been considerable turnover. So the people that are currently in those positions may not have an awareness of what is trying to be accomplished. So I think a informational letter or us attending some of their meetings might be helpful to give them the bigger picture view and how that tower is part of an integral communication system to aid first responders overall.
Would you see the Broadband Committee approving a letter of some sort? I mean, I can sign it if you wish, or that you can sign it. Does it matter?
Yeah, I think it personally. I think it would be helpful to come from both the state and the committee. I think that's the most appropriate, given we have an active committee at this time.
Okay.
That seems appropriate.
Chair Lampy.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, this is Kyle Richardson from FirstNet Authority. We actually do have a letter from our CEO that's been drafted recently that deals with this very issue. I'd be willing to share that with you and the committee for consideration, at least from the authority side. It really gets into, the background of what went into making this into law and where we're at with the deployment.
That would be very helpful, Kyle.
Very helpful, yes.
Okay, absolutely.
Yes, if you could present that to the committee and give it to Michelle, I'll let them review it, and then I think maybe next month, maybe hopefully that will be done if time allows. If not, that's fine also. But then we can vote for the board to send that out and to who to send it to. Is that acceptable?
Yep, and I don't see any issues with that timeline. We ought to be able to have it done by the next meeting.
Perfect. Perfect. Anything else, Dave Burnett?
No, sir, not this time.
Okay. So what we have left here is the two amendments that I added. The first one is the STR policy review. When we first did the STRs about 10 years ago, I don't believe it's been that long, but we did a procedure on the use of those. As with anything, I think we need to look at this and either get it into the new format with the policy in the format that we currently use today. Then you can develop a policy and refer to this document, or you can completely redo this procedure and make it in the format that we use today. I would just ask, the point of my putting on the agenda is that I would like to have it go to a committee to review that.
We're scrolling through it, there's usually a section on the bottom that identifies who's responsible for review.
Okay.
Does this one have that?
I don't think so.
Chair Bischoff, I believe this policy precedes that practice.
Okay, of course.
This was officially adopted in 2012, so it is nearing its 10-year mark as far as age.
So you got a lot on your plate. You can certainly go to governance. I think governance, I believe, because I've been here a while, I believe governance may have developed this based off the Attorney General's input on this as well. But it doesn't matter what committee. Peter, are you willing to look at this?
Yeah, I could look at that.
Okay. All right, so we'll push that to governance. If you need help, certainly let us know what other committee involvement you need.
Sure.
So the last thing I have for new business is the join process for Isicsb. The current one we use, I think it needs to be looked at. In fact, I think we could probably do it a lot cheaper. And with what they call JOT form. I don't know, Chris, if you've got that available where you could put it on the screen for people to see.
Yep.
So my intent on this one is the intent of the same as the STR policy. I'd like to get that into committee to take a look at that form for improvement on joining the system for not only efficient but be really effective on how it flows. There's a lot more we can do with it, right down to the notifications of who gets what when somebody applies. So I don't know, Chris, can you give them a quick glimpse? We don't have to go through the complete form, but just a quick snapshot of what we're looking at.
I've been able to mock up something for this here. My screen will be back up right now. I just didn't want anybody to see that my password was 1234, right? So
Okay.
Within this kind of mock-up that we have, if you think about how our page was done previously, it was basically a 6 or 7 page sequential load as far as the applying for access. So what we've kind of laid out here is a monochrome gray color scheme with gray lettering. We can link to sample letters of intent here. We can add something new depending on how the application is going to be processed and have it be new or updated. And we can actually set it so that the information that people have to enter changes depending on whether it is a new or an updated application. So, for example, we can tell it to hide some document uploads. We can tell it to remove some information requests depending on new versus updated. But we've got the core of the information all here: first name, last name, contact email, agency, and a lot of the things you may have seen from our previous sign-up form. We've got a place for them to select all of the things that they may represent. We've been able to kind of modify a few of these to make up the current landscape as far as agencies that can use Isicsb. We also have an option where if they are the same person, they don't have to enter their contact information twice. Big change here. We're asking them to specify what level they want with a brief description of what each user level is. There's a place to upload files, and then also some other questions. We'd be using it for daily operations, dispatching, and then, of course, the good old CHASM part of it also. I'm going to broaden the screen a little bit. It does have some nice tie-ins as well. If you go into some settings of it, if I could click on the right thing, you can actually tie this into third-party integrations so that it could, in theory, write to, say, Google Sheets. So that if we have to develop a contact list, as people sign up, it automatically records their email address, and then all we have to do is use that Google Sheet to create that email contact list. We can also have files be uploaded to an online cloud that only we can access, so it makes the document retrieval a lot easier as well. It will actually organize them by date and time and everything else, and along with who that agency is. Other nice thing too is that the form is automatically compatible with most any platform. So for example, if you log on via a desktop, you'll see the desktop website. If you log on via a tablet, it'll give you the orientation of what it'll look like, whether it's landscape or portrait. And then if they log on to a mobile or they log on to the site via mobile phone, it's still compatible with that as well. So we get a lot of mileage out of us out of a mock-up like this, and I think we're looking to see, number one, if the board thinks this is a good idea to pursue a little bit further, and number two, where to go from there. So I'll pass it back to you, Chair Lampe.
Yeah, so that's a brief overview. Like I said, I like to get it to the committee to get their opinion on it, whether we go with it or not. I think they can go right into detail. So question of the day is which committee would like to handle this?
To me, at least for this particular topic, it makes sense that it would go to the user group committee. They're the ones who are the recipient of that sign up information and the need to review it. But I think conceptually, I think using this JOT form for all points or this platform of JOT form to gather information for all of our forms that require users to fill something out is very advantageous for us as a board. I think it gives us the latitude and features to be able to share information effectively and have it retained in a single source, cloud-based file format, if you will. So I think conceptually, I think we all have a stake in that, but for this particular use, user group.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Anybody else? Okay, we don't have the chair of the user group, but Chris is capable of passing that along to that group. We'll just go ahead and pass it to the user group. Good recommendation, Michelle. That's a perfect spot for it. Okay, we are finally down to public comment. And Patrick, I want to make sure I don't forget you. Is there anything else that you needed to talk about with regards to frequency, licensing? I believe it was you were the one to. Is there anything else?
Chair, I think I saw a note that Patrick had left the meeting.
Okay. So then we're down to public comment, and if this is the time, anybody that's still with us would like to comment, is your time.
Chair Lampe, this is Melvin Mercado. I'd like to say a couple of things.
Sure, go ahead.
I just, I want to apologize a little bit. I got a little bit emotional there. I just thought it was worth mentioning that, you know, this storm that went through hit a lot of people, including in my team. So it was a little bit overwhelming to ask folks that had damage to their properties to leave home to come and help make sure that things are remaining operational throughout the state. We had folks where, trees fell on their cars or houses and whatnot. So it was a challenge. Crews that are coming out could not find places to stay in. So some people were staying in their trucks because the hotels are all booked for people who have damages to their houses. So it's been a challenge overall. So I just thought I'd give that little bit of explanation so you can understand where I was coming from.
Well, we certainly noticed, I have certainly noticed the dedication that in the last few days to get this thing back to normal. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, we are up for adjournment. If I could get a motion for adjournment, please.
So moved. Bischoff?
Second?
Second, Huffman.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks.